B2B is having a little bit of that moment right now. 8 of our top 10 deals in Q4 were B2B deals. That's the first time it's ever happened.
We talk a lot on this podcast about how product content is just this enormous problem in our industry. But it really isn't unique. Retailers and brands deal with many of the same issues. When you actually dig into the problem, the core problems really revolve around the ability of manufacturers and brands to publish content, and the ability for distributors to bring that content in, to aggregate it. I have known today's guest for a long time and consider him a friend. Rob Gonzalez is a co-founder of one of the largest PIM and PXM platforms, Salsify. Today we get to get into what PXM actually means and how it applies to B2B. What is the digital shelf and why digital shelf is bigger than any other single channel? And where does AI fit into all of this? I hope you enjoy it. So, Mr. Gonzalez, first of all, it's just so fun to have you on, and we have a pretty long history together. I think that always makes these special when someone that I've had a friendship with and a working relationship with, and we've joked around. I think some of my favorite Slack conversations and my favorite conversations were back and forth with you back at Salsify, and that means a lot. And just a personal thing, I think one thing that you should know is that after all my having companies and entrepreneurial stuff, I don't think there's really many people that I would go work for and have be a boss outside of you and Jason, your co-founder. I think you're the only two people that I would actually submit myself under another time, and that's a high compliment. That's a high compliment
so
coming from me.
I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a lot. I just have a lot of respect for you personally, and I have a lot of respect for what you guys are doing at Salsify. And if you ever do want me to come work with you, like, it's going to cost you a lot of money this time, but different story. No, I think you've done your whiteboard. You still doing your whiteboard?
Yeah,
sessions?
every once in a while. It's sporadic. It's not.
Those are my favorite. You're with the whiteboard sessions and other things that you've written and talked about. I think you're one of the guys that's kind of quietly shaping how commerce actually works. Not like the pretty website stuff, but how things get discovered, how things really get bought, sense, and I love that. And before we get into what you guys are doing in B2B specifically, I would love for you to take me back. You have the transition. I know that it wasn't just a pure transition for you individually from Endeca to Salsify, but I know a lot of what we did at Endeca and what you did at Endeca and Jason did at Endeca kind of informed the problems that you started to identify at Salsify. And I would love to just take you back. Like, what problems did you guys see that you wanted to start solving with a new platform?
All right, so we're going ancient history here in e-commerce, right? All right, so
take us back.
Let's take the Wayback Machine. Some of your listeners, maybe not even in grade school for this, but there was a company founded in the end of the 90s called Endeca Technologies in Boston, and what Endeca did was they invented the first search and navigation system, which was used primarily not exclusively but primarily in e-commerce. And the key technology was that if you've got a tremendous amount of data, and the data has like a lot of kind of some structured elements to it, like the color type, the category, things like that, and some unstructured elements, the description, the title, whatnot. They had a system where you could mix structured and unstructured queries together and return responses in 100 milliseconds or less, which is what websites required. So in the 2000s, that technology became the dominant search technology in e-commerce. Endeca powered search and navigation and product detail pages on Walmart.com, Target.com, HomeDepot.com, Tesco.com. More than half of the internet retailer top 100 globally were on Endeca by the time they exited to Oracle in 2011 for over $1 billion. back when $1 billion was a huge exit in tech.
That's true. That's changed, hasn't it?
It's changed. Yeah. The magnitudes of things have changed. But so Endeca was just an awesome technology. But the point of it is we were powering search on the retailers, and to power a great search experience, you need great data. If the data is really great, then the search results are going to be really great. And anybody who's spent a bunch of time on Amazon these days, if you're searching around on Amazon, sometimes it can be very frustrating to find something that kind of matches what you're looking for, right? A lot of the data on Amazon, particularly from third-party sellers, is not really optimized for search, and there's a lot of categories where it can be hard to find things. So at Endeca, we had like half of the engineering staff dedicated towards data cleansing and data normalization and getting data set up for search, which is crazy. It's like, hey, we're a search company, but half of the team is working on data. And half of the team was working on data because the data that we would always start off working with, if you're implementing a Walmart or a Home Depot, the data is just garbage. And you've got to somehow get it into shape in order to drive a good web experience. So coming out of Endeca, all three co-founders of Salsify, we thought, look, we could go back to the root and solve the data problem at the manufacturing side of the supply chain. Like Walmart sells some of its own products, but the vast majority of the products it sells are manufactured by other people, Coca-Cola or Bosch or somebody, right? And we also thought that one of the big challenges if you're on the other side of the supply chain, if you're Coca-Cola, is that Walmart, Target, Kroger, they have different websites. They have different search and data structures, and we know that because we designed the search and the data structures for these websites. Our thesis is that there will never be a data standard that they would all agree to. They would always have different websites and always require different data. So if you could help the manufacturers solve for search and navigation on each of the retailer sites according to the retailer's different search strategies, then that would be a very, very valuable problem to solve. Like Coca-Cola, we thought, should care if their products are ranked number one on search on Walmart. They should care if they're ranked number one on search on Amazon. They should care if their conversion rate is high or low on Walmart or Amazon or Kroger. And in order to do that well, we felt like you'd have to use technology to do it because the problem is just too scaled and too thorny to do by hand. And that was the origin of what we started at Salsify. But really, it all came from Endeca. It all came from driving search and nav on these big websites, realizing that data to drive search and nav was key, and that if we can provide technology to the suppliers to help them participate in that, everybody wins.
So what I learned in that process, though, too, was I think it's important for everybody to understand the different sides of this problem. I don't think a lot of people understand it. So, like on the manufacturer side, you have dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of places that data needs to go to, right? And then from the distributor side or the retailer side, they have a problem of aggregating and bringing all that content in. I mean, they're the same problem from two different sides. Both are a scale problem. Both are one to many. One's many to one. The other one's one to many. That data has to go, and so often people kind of think about it in their own sphere. Out of that, what I learned about that was came the digital shelf, and in the B2C world, we don't really talk about the digital shelf. In the B2C world, we talk about the digital shelf. In the B2B world, we don't really use that term digital shelf, and yet I think it's a great term to use. Can you define what digital shelf is?
Yeah, the way that we thought about it is, to go back in time, like we founded the company in 2012, and in 2012, 2013, 2014, large manufacturers absolutely did not care about solving this problem. I remember I went to the VP of eCommerce at a top 5 CPG company in 2013. Jason and I went there, and it was in New Jersey. We flew down to New Jersey. We go to the office building, and you sign in, you get the badge, and his office is in the basement. And the entire e-commerce department was like him and one other dude. And that was the whole team. It reminded me like in Office Space when that guy
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
fired and they send him to the basement and they give him like the rat poison. It's like, why don't you kill some rats while you're down there? That's how this company was treating the e-commerce team, because e-commerce in 2013 for like a large CPG manufacturer was like maybe fast growing, but on half a point of base. It just didn't matter. It was a complete afterthought. And so trying to get companies to spend money on e-commerce optimization back then was impossible. And you look at the people that's the CEO or the CMO or whoever, 2014, 15, 16, at large consumer brands. These are people that came up in an era where e-commerce absolutely wasn't even a thing. They were doing sales in Bentonville, selling to Walmart in the mid 90s, and did really well and got promoted up through the ranks. And so everything that they know about doing business was based on the physical shelf and based on trading relationships with large retailers. And that's just how the world works. So we were trying to figure out what is vocabulary that we can start using to kind of bridge between the world that they know and the world of digital commerce. And if you say e-commerce, that was not resonant for these folks. So we started hearing, we didn't actually come up with the phrase, but we started hearing people throwing around digital shelf. I remember John Carroll ran e-commerce at Coca-Cola, and he started using the word digital shelf a lot in his presentations. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I talked to John about it. I was like, why are you using that? He's like, because people can understand it, Like in the physical shelf, you've got price, promotion, product, placement. You got the 4 Ps. Like there's all this stuff for the physical shelf. And he's like, if you can kind of bridge what you're looking at digitally with the stuff that people already understand, you might be able to bring them along with you a little bit more effectively. So the terminology digital shelf came out of that. It's like a way to describe the digital shopping experience to manufacturers where most of their business is not online, especially at that time. So it's like you can kind of think of it as a shorthand for e-commerce, but it's more than that, right? It's like it's e-commerce, it's media, it's strategy around traffic driving. It's it's a lot of it's all the surround sound that goes into having a successful shelf presence, which is digital shelf.
It's also not just channels too. I think because a lot of times you kind of, with the direct analogy of physical shelf and digital shelf, you would kind of move to just channels, but it's also everywhere your product is represented online, which can be like Google, and it can be ChatGPT or whatever it is. All these other kind of digital channels that are out there that we don't normally think of as channels, and that's why I love that.
It's funny. That's how I think of it. However, trying to get the market to think of it that way has been a Sisyphean task. Yeah, it's like at the end of the day, I'll give you an example. Like Google 10 years ago created an API where we were a launch partner with them to take product data and inject it basically directly into the Google Knowledge Graph. So Google knew that it was getting a lot of its product data by scraping, but they would prefer to get, like the actual master copy of the data, the actual approved data directly from the manufacturer, and get that into the knowledge graph because they know that it would improve Google search. So they created this program in order to get that data from the manufacturer. And you would think that if you went to a large manufacturer and say, hey, look, there's a new channel that you can, new shelf, however you want to phrase it, that you can publish data to for Google. It's called Google Manufacturer Center. And if you give them a lot of authentic product data that's been, completely approved by you, it's going to improve how your products perform across all Google properties. And it costs you nothing. It's literally free, right? All you got to do is send data to it. Right. And getting anybody to do that was like pulling teeth. Because ultimately, a lot of these companies, their bonuses are not based on how they do on Google. They're not even measuring that, really. It's based on unit sales through, like club or drug or mass or one of their existing sales channels. And so any kind of indirect impact on that that's not part of the chain, nobody's bonus to improve. And if nobody's bonus to improve it, the work generally doesn't get done. So, we used to try to make Digital Shelf mean, look, it's like this collection of all these digital touch points and digital data that collectively is your shopper's end experience online. And it's not just the e-commerce sites, and it's not just the product detail pages. It is also things like Google Manufacturing Center. But that has not been embraced as much as it should be, as much as it's absolutely the right way to look at it.
I get it.
It's just, or what what's the old joke? Like you ship your org structure.
Right.
Companies ship their org structure. That's, so they're not really set up to do it that way.
No, that's so true. I also like when you talked about that progression. You talked about how companies didn't really care about it. It was a small department in the basement of New Jersey. When did that start to shift, and why?
So Amazon was coming up, and I forget the year that Amazon became a top 10 retailer in the U.S. by GMV, but I don't think it was a top 10 retailer even in 2012. Mm-hmm. But they were growing rapidly, and Doug McMillon, the CEO of Walmart, who's got my vote for maybe the best CEO of this century. The guy's incredible. He basically realizes we need to start making moves aggressively and fast, or we're going to become Sears. You know what I mean? Like what Walmart did to Sears, they were like, Amazon's going to do to Walmart unless we move. So they started taking bold risks. They were doing things like acquiring Jet.com. They put Mark Lohr in charge of Walmart.com. Right. They acquired Bonobos, and then in the summer of 2014, Walmart sent a letter to all their suppliers and said, "Look, if you guys don't give us images for e-commerce," and they weren't really asking for a ton of data. It was like images and a couple basics. By October, we're going to delist your products from Walmart.com for the holiday season, because we don't want to have bad shopper experiences.
Wow.
We're sick of people going to Walmart and going to a product detail page and it's not even an image. You don't even know what the thing is, and that's where they were at this point. So that letter from Walmart finally got brands to take the digital thing seriously. And then Macy's, it just coincidentally, Macy's and Dillard's, both department stores, also sent similar letters around that same time period. And so the retailers really pushing on it under the threat of Amazon is what drove the behavior change on the branded manufacturers. And then folks started really taking it seriously after that.
I feel like when I write down the history lessons that I think about, like, it's rarely the carrot that makes people change. It's almost always the stick.
Often, unfortunately, right? Because here's the thing: like there were companies that were doing innovative stuff, and were making money and had outsized growth rates online before and after that time. But so much of that just depended on having forward-looking leadership who, could see where the puck was going and was saying, "Look, we got to be good at this digital thing early." But the vast majority of companies, they're just going to keep on doing what they're doing the same way they've been doing it. It worked last year. It worked next year. Most people, they clock into work at 9. They go through their checklist. They clock out of work. They go home. It's not about taking the big swings or taking the carrot, to your point, right? It's about kind of not being hassled and just in this case the stick was necessary to drive kind of broad-based change across the industry. At some point it got its own momentum. I mean, once you're over 10% of GMV, then it's enough that the CEO pays attention to it. But when you're at like 1% of GMV or less, they don't.
I think one of the problems in B2B is that there is no Walmart size retailer or distributor in B2B that can wield as much power. Of course, Graingers and Fastenals, they have influence, but it's not the same power as a Walmart has to actually drive real change in the market, right?
No.
So our efforts are largely around education and convincing the market that this is good for their business as a competitive advantage, all the positive side, as well as, you know, having some influence from the distributors along the way. And I think it's really different than what exists on the retail side.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Grainger. I mean, Grainger is very innovative.
Yeah.
You know, they were a big Endeca customer in the 2000s. They've just got and have had an awesome website. And Salsify has a great partnership with Grainger, and we got a great partnership with affiliated distributors and with Ferguson. If you look at their market share as compared to like a Walmart's market share or a Kroger's market share or Amazon's market share, it's just not the same thing, right? It's way more fragmented. So they don't quite have like there's a great book that was written in the 2000s called The Walmart Effect. Mm-hmm. It's you know what a monopoly is? A monopoly is where you control all of the supply of a thing. A monopsony is where you control all of the demand of a thing. Mm. And these economists were looking at Walmart and saying it's a monopsony. You know, Walmart was like 10, 11% of all retail in the U.S. and they had such enormous buying power that they could like squeeze their suppliers. That's a monopsony sort of situation, so Walmart has this crazy power over the supply chain, and Amazon has now a crazy power over the supply chain. But none of the B2B distributors, even though nobody's have the same.
They're single digit. They have kind of single digit market share at best, most of these, and they're the largest, right? They can be the largest one in the industry and only have single digit kind of control.
Yeah, it's tough for everybody because I mean ultimately, you know, as younger people enter the space, they want digital experiences, right? That you've got an old industry where a lot of it's done by phone and fax, and that's just not how the new generation wants to operate. And so the folks that lean into digital leadership, I think, are going to win. They're going to see outsized market share, and the ones that don't are just going to see decline. And that's what happened in the consumer space. It's happening in industrials right now. I mean, I'll give you a stat. I mean, you and I know it's like we've at Salsify been following the industrial space, you know, B2B broadly forever. When we raised our Series A in 2013, we did one of those total addressable market studies. We're looking at like how big can this company get? What's the addressable market? Most of it's in B2B. Like in fact, consumer brands are it's a much smaller market than B2B brands. And the reason that we focus on consumer brands first is just digital maturity. They were ready to buy earlier, especially after that Walmart letter. They were ready to buy. And even after the Walmart letter, there's a bunch of categories that didn't buy. One of my favorite stories is before COVID, we worked with one major alcohol manufacturer, and that was like in some experimental capacity. You know, they had some kind of e-commerce experiment budget, and we got some money out of it. And it was just it didn't matter. And then COVID happens, and everybody's at home, and everybody's ordering booze online. They're, you know, Drizzly and Uber Eats, and all of a sudden, e-commerce is a big deal. And by the end of 2021, we were working with 28 of the top 30 global alcohol distributors, incredible. Right? And so it's like this. All of a sudden, the category went online, and then there's people whose job it is to figure it out, and they'll take it seriously. And so B2B, I think, is having a little bit of that moment right now. Eight of our top 10 deals in Q4 were B2B deals, and that's the first time it's ever happened.
Nice.
So I feel like there's this movement that's happening in the space that's different. It's something. There's like a bit that's flipped, and it's a different bit though than like the Walmart bit that I was talking about in 2014. With B2B, it feels more like a generational kind of turnover. That's hitting a breaking point. Younger people coming in, that type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I've been preaching years that, you know, first of all, it was millennials and now Gen Z, but now it's just so much more evident. I mean, my oldest, she's 26. She's smack in the workforce, you know. I mean, as scary as that is, I mean, they're smack in the workforce. All my other girls are, you know, they're all Gen Z. They've never known a world without the internet. They were ordering DoorDash as sophomores in high school, you know, at 11:30 at night, and that's their expectations, and I think that is just becoming more evident. Let's pivot and talk about B2B, bringing it up. Before we completely get there, You guys talk about PXM.
Yeah.
And let's explain what PXM is. Let's contrast it with PIM, which I think everybody is familiar with it, and why that's an important differentiation for you guys.
Yeah. So PXM is product experience management, and the philosophy of PXM is you start at the shopper or buyer experience and work your way backwards to understand what data and content is necessary to make that experience great. And so from our perspective, we start with somebody's on Walmart.com and they're searching product, or somebody's on Amazon.com and they're searching product, or somebody's on Kroger.com and they're searching product, or somebody's on Grainger and they're searching product, right? What information do you have to have about your product on Grainger or on Amazon for that product to show up? Especially you want it to show up in the top 1, 2, or 3 search results for whatever the searches are. And then once it shows up, if they click on it, what other information has to be there for them to add it to the cart? What authoritative information is on the product detail page to give people confidence that this is the right problem, this is the right product to solve the problem that they're looking to solve, right? So you start from that experience, from the buyer or shopper experience, and you work your way backwards. And that determines what information you need to make available on Amazon or Grainger or Walmart or wherever your products are sold. And it turns out that the information that Amazon needs, or the information that you need to provide Amazon to make it successful, versus the information that you need to provide Grainger, is wildly different information. The buyers are different, even for the same product. The buyers are different, the search behaviors are different, the websites are different. And so there's like kind of an Amazon version of your product data and a Grainger version of your product data. They both have to be 100% accurate and governed, but they are different. And so PXM, by starting from that buyer experience and working your way backwards, it's a fundamentally multi-channel view of the product information, because every channel is going to need kind of a slightly different version of this stuff. Now, you need all the capabilities of a PIM in order to do this. Like PIM is kind of a subset of features of what it takes to do PXM. So PXM is you can kind of think of it as like PIM, but multi-channel, and also including a lot more unstructured content, and also including media. And, there's a lot of extra stuff in there. PIM, I think, is kind of a dumb category. I don't think PIMs matter that much. It's just it's a database for storing products. I don't know. You could vibe code your way into a PIM these days pretty easily. Mm-hmm. It's not that interesting, right? If you store product data, it's like the classic PIM. The purpose of it was to get product data in one place, to create a golden record, to have a source of truth that you can look up product data and know it's accurate. PXMs can do that. That's just not that. There's not enough value there. PIMs made sense on the retail side of the supply chain, where you've got 5 million SKUs, and they're coming from 10,000 manufacturers, and you've got to somehow organize all that crap. On that side of the supply chain, PIMs made sense. On the manufacturer side of the supply chain, it was like you just needed a place to stick the data, and there's just not that much value in that. So PXM is sort of, I think, in my view, it's a logical evolution of PIMs to actually making PIMs useful. It's like a PIM a PIM, and it can get the data to market, and it can optimize the data, and it can make sure all your trading partners get the data they need, that type of thing. So that's what it is.
I think for everyone listening, another way to think about that is, you would never buy an ERP that was built for distributors if you're a manufacturer. Like you buy the ERP that's built for manufacturing, and you build on top of that, and vice versa. And what this feels like is it's too elementary to say PIM for manufacturing, but it's the things that manufacturers need to do with the data. It's not just PIM, and the differences between a manufacturer and a distributor and how they deal with product data and what they do with it is extremely different. And I think that's a decent analogy to how people should think about this as well.
Yeah. Ultimately, I feel like PIMs come from a different era of IT, right? Like where it's like, I need to store and govern stuff. That was what a PIM RFP looks like: store and govern. Yeah. But businesses have moved past that kind of old IT way of looking things. What you have to look for is what's the end. Start with the end in mind. What is this for? What is the business value? How does this tie to how my business works? If you start from there and you work your way backwards, what you don't get is you don't get a classic, golden record PIM. That's not what you get.
So you guys have done B2B for the entire life of the company, and I know a large percentage of your customers are B2B. However, I think, especially over the last year, you've really spent time really building and thinking through how B2B companies, both on the manufacturing side and distribution side, should be approached. Can you talk about what you guys are thinking about that manufacturing and distribution lens as it's different from retail?
Yeah, I mean, some of the use cases are the exact same. You've got lots of data. The data, and in B2B, the data is even more complicated than consumer data. Mm-hmm. The products are more technical. There's more aspects of the products that you need to make sure are captured in the data, both in unstructured and structured ways. And you've just got more places it's got to go. I mean, I remember I did a project with 3M Industrials 10 years ago, and they had 800 distribution partners in the U.S. alone. You never see a consumer brand with 800 customers in just the U.S. That's not really how the market works. It's a lot more consolidated. So, I guess maybe an exception would be sports, like local ski and board shops, maybe. But otherwise, in industrials, you've got this kind of more complicated data and more places to go. So the general shape of the problem is the same shape of the problem consumers have. It's a little bit harder. I'd say that one of the major differences, it has to do with the shape of the data coming in. So in consumer brands, they will often have like a master data management program. And then they'll have a digital asset management system, and they'll have a copy system, and they'll have all these things. And so the challenge in a consumer brand is, okay, well, I'm doing an implementation. Amazon requires 400 different fields. These 400 different fields might live in 40 different systems within your company. So it becomes a problem of collecting the data from 40 different systems. In B2B manufacturing, there's not that many systems. There's so much less IT stuff that's been built up over time. So much still happens in email or in like the PDF product spec sheets and things like that. So you've got this challenge of, one of the major things that we've been building out and doing is, you take a PDF and you see if you can extract all the product data, you need from it, and structure it and then validate it and have a review process. And that's a use case you never see on the consumer side. So there's some, when you get into the specifics on how you solve the problem, there's differences, but the overall shape of the problem is about the same.
I think one of the, as you talk to manufacturers, one of the issues that's not necessarily a technology problem or a PXM PIM problem is, even if you provide the data to the distributor, it could be like 3 months, before that data actually gets published. And so, talking to distributors about distributors are investing in their technology to be able to get data into their own PIMs and up to their website faster. And I feel like that's not, when everybody can be having the same conversation about the value of doing that, I think it's very beneficial. When a manufacturer can talk to its distributor partners about helping, increase their own technology, I feel like that's actually had some levels of success in moving the needle there.
I think that will change slowly. There's just too many companies. Like on the consumer brands, right? There's a grocer in the U.S. with revenues, I don't want to single them out, but to call it north of $50 billion, where the item setup process takes 6 months.
Yeah.
And, you submit content and it's going live in 4 months, and where updates are basically impossible or they take months to get done. So, it's not like everybody solved this all the time. I mean, you've got companies like Amazon. When we were first automating through Amazon, they would do a lot of their validation in India. So Amazon famously had these, you would go to log into Vendor Central if you were a first party seller. You'd download an Amazon spreadsheet. It would have, 300, 400 columns of data you'd have to fill in to get your product live. You'd fill out this whole thing. You'd email it to Amazon or upload it into the portal. That would get sent over to a team in India. And the team in India for Amazon would then look over the sheet by hand and then might reject it. Right. And they might reject it and say, column J.
And then it starts all over again.
Right. And then it starts all over again. And they had an SLA of 7 days for that. So you'd have this process where, you could submit it, 7 days go by, you got to resubmit, 7 days go by. So it could take weeks to get it live. Right. And so much of the journey that an Amazon or a Walmart or a Kroger has been on for the last decade has been, how do we decrease the cycle time, decrease the hours put into this, push the validation to, others in the supply chain, all that type of stuff. And you get to the point where, you could submit content and it'll be live within 24 hours. And, they've gotten there, but it's taken a long time for all those folks to get there. And they're the leaders. This isn't like a solved problem in a utopian way anywhere in the industry. And, whether you're talking consumer retail or whether you're talking industrial supply distribution, nobody's really got this nailed. But I think what you can bet on is the market leaders are going to move faster. I mean, I know that, like a Grainger or an affiliated distributors, they've got big ambitions here. They're going to be doing,
they do.
They're going to be doing like the Amazon pace of change. They're going to be moving more towards real-time updates. And, I think the suppliers that move in lockstep with them gain market share, and the suppliers that don't move in lockstep with that lose market share. And I think it's that simple.
That's amazing. Let's close with a couple just questions specific about Salsify. Well, if you were to, top 2 or 3, why Salsify over your competitors? What do you say about that?
Oh man,
it's 352.
352. So number one, we're the only product system that's built for multi-channel, and every B2B manufacturer is multi-channel by default. You're not just doing direct to consumer, as it were, right? You're selling through hundreds of distribution channels, all which have different data requirements. And the more that you meet each of those individual data requirements, the better your products are going to perform through their sites. So we're the only system that does that multi-channel optimization. So that's one. Number 2, people really like working with us. I know it's kind of like a weird thing to say, but you look at our NPS versus any competition, it's wildly better. The way that we run the business, the way that we price our products, we don't make money on the first year or 2 that a customer is with us. Our profit comes from having customers for 5 to 10 years or more. And that's the whole model. And so we're really in it for the long haul. We want to sign somebody up. We want them to be with us for life. We want them to have no reason to go to anybody else ever. And so, we like to be easy to work with, and that's been true from the beginning. And I do think that matters in this space, especially given how volatile the space is. And in 3, we didn't even talk about AI, man, but we're the AI leaders in this space. We're prototyping stuff with an Amazon and an OpenAI and a Walmart with all of their shopping initiatives. We're at the forefront of all of this stuff. If you think about how B2B buying is going to change, man, in B2B, there are so many products, and it's so technical, and it's so hard to figure out exactly what's going to work in what situations. It requires so much expertise. A lot of that expertise is retiring. The people who are younger, who are coming in, do not have that expertise. And man, if they could have AI assistants help them with selection for jobs, that's just a massive opportunity. I mean, I tend to think that in B2B industrial supply, there's going to be more AI buying disruption than there is in consumer brand shopping for exactly that reason. And so we're doing a lot there. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I think it's going to be huge in this.
No, I was actually, that was still in my list. And the top, so I deal with a lot of the startups coming out of
all of different places. For the first time, I now have 5 startups in the portfolio that are out of Silicon Valley.
All right. That's awesome.
Like that, we've never had Silicon Valley based or backed startups enter into the B2B e-commerce space, and so it's the first time it's happened, and all based off of AI. What do you when you kind of think of through AI, what's kind of the top use cases that you guys are addressing now?
Well, if you look at the data that you need for e-commerce, I mean, you go to a product detail page on Amazon, for example, or on Grainger, you've got things like the image gallery. Mm-hmm. You've got the product title, you've got a description, you've got features, you've got maybe product family comparison charts, you might have instructional videos, you might have the PDF documentation, you might have a bunch of product attributes, dimensions, product specs. There's like a lot of information that's on that page. AI wants all that information, but it also wants information that you usually don't find on those pages.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Amazon Rufus data that it likes to ingest, it uses fields. These aren't the exact names of the fields, but just so you get a sense of it, they're fields that are like used for, used in location, used in conjunction with, used instead of. It's all about the context in which the product is useful. And the context in which the product is useful is not information that most companies store internally in any system right now. And it's not information that most retailers, except for the AI forward ones, are even asking for. So that kind of gives you a glance at where things might be going, right? It makes sense, right? You think about AI, like my dishwasher was breaking. It's had a good run. It's 25 years old, which is an amazing run for a dishwasher. It's a Miele. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with this thing. And so I bring up, Claude, which is the AI chat assistant that I use, and it walks me through everything having to do with this dishwasher. And in the process of diagnosing what's wrong with the dishwasher, I find a leak under the sink that had been going on for a little while. And it was like, hey, this is old plumbing, and I don't really know how to fix it. So I take photos of it and I give it to Claude. And Claude tells me, okay, this is what you have to buy at the hardware store to replace, this filter feed into the dishwasher. Wow. Here are the different pieces, right? Here's what they're called. Here's what you should ask the guy about. And like, that's amazing. And I just think like an industrial supply, there's just, or building construction or anything, there's just so many parts that are out there. And like, oh, they're out of stock with the thing that you normally use. What's a substitute? There's how many? And if you've got a kid who's running to the store for you, he's 24 years old, has only been working 4 or 5 years for you, maybe doesn't know the answer. Like, how many opportunities are there to say, like, I'm on a roofing job, here are the specs, here's the requirements, help me figure out a couple things that might work. Man, that's just like this. It's going to be dominant in this space.
I wrote a white paper on it. Haven't done anything about it, but I think an amazing opportunity is someone to create a marketplace for retired people that have retired, for them just to look at products, almost like a dating app, and then answer questions about the product. Like, have you ever used this in a bush fix anywhere? And they can swipe, like, I don't like that product, swipe left, right? But stay on a product, swipe right, and then spend some time with the product and be like, yeah, this is what it is. This is what it does. I used this in 1984. I mean, guys in their industry love to talk, and especially about this stuff. And so if you just gave them a chance to talk into their phones, and I think there's a chance to create a marketplace to create not the product data, but the product knowledge.
Yeah.
And to be able to digitize that. And if somebody out there wants to do it with me, I'm in to do that idea.
Yeah, it's like you can think about like the PXM historically has been, what is the product? What is the thing that I'm buying? And I think the AI version of this is when and where and why and for what is it used?
Is it used? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that marketplace idea that you're talking about would be an amazing way to get the raw data necessary to do the second bit of it.
Yeah, guys getting paid $5 a widget to do their stuff or whatever. I don't know. It's a cool idea. What? So the people that should be looking at Salsify, like how would you characterize that? Like just manufacturers? How would you describe?
Manufacturers is our core market.
Yeah.
Across categories. It's like a Bosch, a Coke, a L'Oreal, a Waste Quip, an American Bath Group, an Atcor, an MSA Safety, a Canada Goose. You know what I mean? It's like if you manufacture a product, and particularly if you're multi-channel, that's who we stand for. That's our core market. Now we'll sell a product to a retailer or a distributor here and there if they want to buy it. Usually our relationships with distributors and retailers is more of a partnership angle, where we're building integrations into their systems. So we've got a great integration into Amazon, for example. We got a great integration into Walmart. We got a great integration into Grainger, so that people who are in Salsify can get their data to these destinations automatically. Our relationship with them tends to be more of a partnership angle, and we'd love to talk to anybody who'd like to partner with us in that perspective. But
amazing.
Our core manufacturers. We love manufacturers. We love people who make things.
Love it. Dude, I appreciate it. Nice seeing you again. We'll have to do
you
this
too,
again. I know Salsify is now a partner with the association, so I know we're planning on doing a couple other things as well. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Manufacturers, distributors, leaders in the zone. If you're building B2B, this the podcast throne. The industry's heartbeat, we're setting the tone. Turn insights to actions, it's how empires are grown. We're talking change management, breaking resistance. Strategies so sharp, they redefine persistence. Customer adoption, it's more than retention. It's building a movement, commanding attention. It's the B2B e-commerce show, where the vision is clear and the strategies glow. From the top of the globe, we're the pros who know. Turn the volume up loud, it's time to grow. We bring news, big topics, insights to spark. From the boardroom's glow to the warehouse dark. Digital transformations, the path we're paving. Helping you lead through the change you're facing. This is more than a podcast, it's the industry's voice. Giving you the tools to make the right choice. No fluff, just facts, no hype, just action. The show where solutions are more than a fraction. It's the B2B e-commerce show, where the vision is clear and the strategies glow. From the top of the globe, we're the pros who know. Turn the volume up loud, it's time to grow.
This is your guide to the digital race. Practical advice, no time to waste. So tune in, gear up, and let's own the space. It's the B2B e-commerce show, the industry's base. The industry's base. The industry's base.